My friend, welcome to Atal'Dazar.
Atal'Dazar.
A lot of the dungeons in BFA have horrible names. I'm just going to put it out there, but I'm sure we'll get used to them. But looking through this, like the Temple of Sethralis, the Siege of Boralis, they all have these kind of OP names, except for like obvious ones like Waycrest Manor, which actually sounds kind of fun. Waycrest Manor sounds like a very fun place indeed, but we are entering Atal'Dazar. You might have seen some clips of this from BlizzCon. This is one of the dungeons they showed off. But let me tell you, nothing does this, no footage, even the footage I'm showing you now, can do this place justice to when you walk in there. And it's the whole dungeon you can see. And I'm not talking like Eye of Ashara, where you get the bit and then you can go to the edge and you can kind of see some, but there's more behind the back and all that. In here, you can see the whole temple from the very moment you enter. You're on this high pedestal, and it's the Golden City is what they're calling it. It might get nicknamed Golden City. I know most players will go, it's Atal'Dazar, so...
I don't think they will, mate. I think you're just thinking people are too lazy.
I know I'm too lazy.
I'm going to call it Atal'Dazar. I might even call it AD, mate.
AD. It probably will be AD. AD makes more sense. But it's glorious. You can see everything that's going on with this majestic waterfall right in front of you. As I say, you start on pretty much the highest possible platform in there with these huge golden steps that lead down actually into the dungeon. And I know you've done Freehold. We're going to talk about it in the next video. But for me, one thing that was immensely obvious in here, and I was so thankful for, is this place is built from the ground up for Mythic Plus to be a good, fun experience.
Oh, really?
And it was so obvious with how it was designed, how the bosses worked, that this is designed to be a dungeon that, yeah, sure, you'll visit it while leveling, you get your quests or whatever, you'll go and see it, you're not going to struggle too much. But once you hit endgame, this is where this place is going to shine. Like, golden shine, we could say. But it's definitely, this is where it's going to shine. So it is a troll dungeon. Mm-hmm. It feels a bit like Zul'Aman in layout, but obviously it's got the golden theme mixed into it. I remembered a little bit about one of the bosses, but there's 4 bosses total. Mm-hmm. The other 3 bosses I couldn't remember a damn thing about whatsoever. So I went in essentially blind. I did remember the Stairs of Death, where we saw the Blizzard team die on the Stairs of Death. And I did do this dungeon with Sluty, who I believe also died on the Stairs of Death. Not that I want to toss shade, but that happened.
Classic Sluty, actually.
Classic Sluty with his wizard's mustache. Down he went. Down he went. So going through the dungeon then, like I said, built for Mythic Plus. So what you're going to find here is trash and bosses that are not particularly difficult in normal because they're not supposed to be. This is like a introduction to the dungeon.
Yep.
Very, very simple. So we get some little small packs of dinosaurs, some various trolls in that style, again, like you see in Zul'Aman. So you've got things like priestesses, hexers, that kind of feel to it. I would almost say it feels a little bit like the Sunwell dungeon, the Terrace, the Magister's Terrace.
Yep.
You know, where you've got like 4 different humanoids that have different abilities each.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah, that kind of feel to it. That's what you're going in here looking for. So we kind of did smash through this. So let's move through. As I said, on normal it's not supposed to be hard by any means. Moving on to the first boss, which was Priestess. We could do them in any order, by the way. You can do the first 3 bosses in any order.
Okay.
And the idea is once you kill all 3, then the final way opens.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Many of you will have seen it, but the waterfall itself disappears and turns into golden steps to lead to the last boss.
Right.
Priestess Atal'Dazar was what we did first, which is Hakar 2.0. For those of you who never did Hakar properly, that will mean nothing to you. But for those of us who played in Vanilla, or even in TBC, Hakar 2.0 will, if I say Corrupted Blood, that will absolutely make a ton of sense. Mm-hmm. Dripping in gold, with huge vats of gold, and then summons globs of gold to come and get you. But very, very simple idea, which is DPS. It'll try and suck your life away, the blood troll style, in order to heal her. But what you do is you debuff yourself with tainted blood. You actually give yourself a debuff. And when she tries to heal herself with your blood, it's bad blood. We got bad blood. And she goes, no, this is bad. I don't like this. And she's not getting those heals off. So a very, very simplistic idea that you know, like, once this gets into the Mythic Plus territory, that debuff is going to hurt. Something fierce. You're going to have to manage it some ways. Maybe immunity block. All these kind of crazy things. And I'm absolutely 100% sure, I haven't read the Dungeon Journal because I don't like to play that way, that she probably did about 4 or 5 other things that didn't really do anything, so I didn't really notice.
You don't notice though in Taurus.
Yeah, in normal they don't do anything. I know there was some spell stealing going on because I could hear the sound effects and I could hear her buffing herself. So I know we had a mage in there, so I could hear someone sucking that magic away. So I know that was going on. So a pretty decent start. The next boss we did was Volcarl, or Grobulus 2.0, for those of us who've done Next Ramus. Yeah, Grobulus 2.0. A very simple idea of filling the room with nasty pools of stuff and finding correct positioning. I imagine in Pugs, even on normal, this is going to be a nightmare. But obviously I was playing with some seasoned graders who went, oh, okay, I get this mechanic, and everyone just instantly fell into position and we utilised the space properly, which is not something that will happen in Pugs who have never done Nax Ramus, even in its vanilla or Wrath of the Lich King version. But essentially the idea is defeat some totems which are healing him, so you can actually DPS him, and then he's going to start spawning nasty, horrible pools which remain there for the remainder of the fight. So you've just got to move in a way where you're trying to drop as few pools as possible, and also leave yourself plenty of space to move into. But a cool fight nonetheless. Again, I'm going to say this for the last time, but bear in mind this. You can see where they're going with this once this gets much harder. Yeah, that's what you can see with it. But aesthetic-wise, still glorious.
I like the fact, by the sounds of it, they're using a lot of vintage raid mechanics, but now putting them into dungeons.
It's a case of this stuff is like 10 years old.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, this is stuff. There's nothing wrong with the Grobulus mechanic, and the Hakar mechanic was ingenious at the time. For anybody who did Hakar originally, getting people to get corrupted blood properly was really tough. For vanilla mechanics, it was quite a thing to get the whole raid to gain this debuff properly and manage it. So yeah, it's nice to see that they're saying, look, this stuff is 10 years old and there was nothing wrong with it the first time, so we can reuse this properly. We fight a dinosaur. I was trying to remember as we started recording this what that dungeon was. I can't even remember which expansion it was, which also featured a similar sort of dinosaur fight. There was a dungeon a while ago. It might have been during Cataclysm. I'll have to look back and check. But there's a dungeon where we worked our way to the top of a tower, top of a temple, a troll temple.
Right.
And there was a dinosaur fight in there. So it's kind of similar to that. Basically, they keep him in a pit, and they throw the bones and stuff in there. There's all bones dotted around. This is where they throw all the corpses of the rituals and things like that. So they feed the dinosaur with all these bits of legs and bones and stuff like that. But we've got very classic mechanics here again. The dinosaur that fears. You can line of sight the fear. It's a very interesting thing, actually. So if you think of Siege of Orgrimmar and the dinosaur in there, I forget his name offhand.
Thok, is it?
Thok the Bloodthirsty. So he fixates someone and chases them.
Yeah.
So that mechanic is in there, but simultaneously they've mixed it with a fear which needs to be line of sighted. So there are pillars dotted around. So what you're going to be managing...
So he can fear you and then chase you, and if you...
Other way round. So what you want to be doing is the person who gets fixate needs to be dragging Razan, which is the name of the dinosaur, dragging him towards a pillar, because when he stops that, he's then going to cast this fear.
Yeah.
Now, the pillars are dotted around the room in such a way that if someone just randomly runs in any old direction, they're not going to be able to get the group into line of sight. You're all going to get feared, and then you're going to die.
Yeah.
So there's some nice elements of control there. Not punishing in normal whatsoever. Like, we screwed it up several times.
It's just a introduction to mechanics.
Yeah, it was a fear I could break. I was DPSing on a warrior, so whatever. I could break it myself. I could berserker rage out of it. But that is something that's going to be a very cool boss to manage, and you're going to need a coordinated team to get that done, which is exactly what I'm looking for in these dungeons. Cool. But once he's down, very simple. We move on to our last boss, Yasma. Yasma was very much like Jeklik, actually. Again, going back to the old school troll dungeons. But the other version they gave us in Zulaman, which was the last boss there. Let me explain it to you and it'll make more sense.
Yeah.
So this takes place in a very confined room for what you have to do there. Hugely confined room, where you're going to have nasty pools of stuff flying around the room, which then leave permanent pools. I believe it is if they hit you, so they kind of float through the room. But if they hit you, they then form a pool. Now, what that means is you can kind of stack them. If you've got one player who's like intentionally getting hit, if he gets hit in one place, you can kind of clear the room of these floating pools while keeping the permanent pools overlapping somewhere. So you get what I'm saying there? So you can clear.
I think so.
You think so, but in Mythic Plus it makes sense. So just imagine these orbs. Let's call them orbs. Flying around the room.
Yep.
If anybody gets hit by them, they'll then like detonate and leave a pool on the floor.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so what you can try to have happen is one player or a couple of players getting hit in a certain spot intentionally so that the room doesn't fill up with pools. Yep. So you're like stacking them in one place. But the other big mechanic, which in Pugs, I'm sorry guys, this is going to be a nightmare for you. I'm so sorry. Is somebody gets a debuff. It's very clear on the announcement. It's like, you have the debuff. You have to get as far away from the boss as possible very quickly. because that's going to spawn an ad, and that ad is just going to fixate and travel towards that boss. So if you get Derpalurper, Derpalurper, he thinks that his name being announced by the game means that he's a hero.
It's me!
It's me, I've been chosen. He's probably going to screw you up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I didn't know it was going to do this, but I saw the first player get it. I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And I watched what he did, and he moved to the back of the room. These guys had obviously done the dungeon before.
Yeah.
And then it spawned there. I was like, oh, okay, so we get away from the boss if you have that. And I was chosen next, actually. So I was like, aha, I got this. I know what's going on. Which then brought us to the end of the dungeon. Item level 265 it was dropping. For those of you who are curious about loot, 265 loot is what was dropping in there. But that was our first dungeon. Very cool. Enjoyed it a lot. So there we go. Now we're going to take a look at Freehold. Pirates! Arr!